Please go ahead. We are live now.
Okay, so a very good afternoon to everyone. I have great pleasure in welcoming Mr. Gautam Bali, Chairman of the National Council on Direct Selling of ASSOCHAM, to this webinar on rising significance of gig economy. I also welcome all the experts, panelists, and participants to this webinar. My special welcome to our board members, Professor Saurabh Agarwal, and our knowledge partner, the Primus Partners, Mr. Kanishk Maheshwari, Managing Director of the Primus Partners. Those who have, and he has put a lot of, he and his team has put a lot of efforts in preparing a crisp report, which will be released today here. There are so many, speakers today, and we have kept this session for 1.5 hours. So without, putting other things in a duplicate manner, I expect that each and everyone will give a different perspective of each aspect of this gig economy. And with this, I request Madam Chavi Hemant to please moderate the session.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Rajora. First of all, let's, thank you, Mr. Rajora and the team for ensuring that we all are connected during these times through webinars. And today's topic is very significant and absolutely the need of the hour, because we are looking forward that, there will be, all of us want our own timings and things like that. And gig economy has really pushed, and a lot of employment is being generated because of the gig economy and flexibility of the work timings which we have. So now, as we have a lot of interesting panelists, I will also not take too much time, and I'll request Mr. Gautam Bali to share his presentation. That presentation will help us to understand and make the momentum for this wonderful discussion and interesting discussion, which we all will have today, primarily on gig economy. And of course, we will get to know from all the other panelists that, what is the way forward, and how each of you will share us that, how we are going to move forward about that. So over to you, Mr. Gautam Bali.
Thank you so much, Chavi. And may I have the presentation on, please? Okay. Okay, great. Dear industry colleagues, co-panelists, and all the participants who have joined us today for this very important and informative discussion. I firmly believe that we must appreciate each other more often than we do. So before I delve into the presentation on gig economy, I take this opportunity to thank ASSOCHAM for keeping all of us connected through these webinars. Cooperation of Mr. Rajora and his team is applaudable indeed. Now, moving forward to our discussion on gig economy, let me share my presentation, which has been divided into 3 parts. And number 1 is understanding and characteristics of gig economy. And secondly, I'm going to talk about gig economy in India. And thirdly, it is going to be the code on social security, which is of the year 2020. Right, taking you further ahead, I would like to talk about what exactly is gig economy. Can we move on to the slide number 3, please? Okay. A gig economy involves a temporary contractual job or a short-term contract or a freelance work that a person may take on a project or 2 project basis, for which the payment is done once the task is completed. Taking you on to the next slide, the task-based economy is referred as gig economy, right? And the gig economy includes self-employed people like direct sellers, freelancers, independent contractors, and the part-time workers. In this, the benefits are the overhead costs are reduced for gig economy, as employers, they offer contractual jobs. Now let's explore the work engagement in gig economy. Taking you on to the next slide. In fact, the work in gig economy is divided into service seeker and the service provider. Gig economy will herald the new work engagement in days to come. And now let's delve into the characteristics which are so interlinked with the digital economy. On the next slide, as I'm going to show it to you, the characteristics of gig economy, what exactly are they? You know, online platforms, they connect workers and customers. The users work whenever they want. That gives them definitely a freedom of choosing their own working hours. A rate is paid for a specific task, and the payment is intermediated by the platforms. Now, let's move forward to the role played by stakeholders in the gig economy. As you will see in the next slide, the stakeholders, who exactly are the stakeholders? Stakeholders include consumers, workers, and entrepreneurs, and there is no symbiotic relationship between the different stakeholders in the gig economy. If we talk about the consumers, the gig economy is providing access to many types of services in a democratic manner. Due to digitalization, services offered by gig economy are now more affordable and highly efficient. If we talk about the workers in gig economy, workers see it as an alternative to 9-to-5 work in a traditional economy and an opportunity to decide their own working hours. When we talk about the emerging business in the economy, gig economy has kick-started a new way of startups and entrepreneurship. Now let's traverse the benefits of the gig economy, which you're going to see in the next slide. Over here, I have shared pointers in the slide, and I would like to inform on the benefits which gig economy generates for the stakeholders. The benefit, number one benefit which I would like to highlight over here, gig economy actually reduces the fixed costs, which exactly, you know, for any a business house or a business concern, is the fixed overheads is one of the major concerns. Now it reduces the fixed costs because the benefit is of a lower payroll expenses. There are reduced investments, and examples are Uber, Ola drivers which own their vehicles and have got the flexibility in managing their own hours. The human capital has the opportunity of complete flexibility in hours and freedom to work from home. It is a common way for people to earn extra income and gives them less risk of getting stuck in a routine job. You know, as we used to hear in all those developed economy where people were working approximately 2 to 3 jobs to make their end meet, or in fact to improve their lifestyle. But that was one kind of a thing which was absolutely unheard in India. But now we hear examples of people, those who are working during the day and they are driving Uber or Ola in the evening, or they are working with the pizza chains like Domino's or KFC or any of Zomato and Swiggy kind of a services too, right? In my next slide, let's understand what is promoting this gig economy. In this slide, you see the promotion of the gig economy. It is primarily because of emergence of the digital era, right? Workforce is highly mobile and work can be done from anywhere and anytime. During the COVID-19 times, in fact, I know quite a lot of people, some of my friends, those who have actually gone up to the hills, hired a cottage over there, and during the entire day, they are working from that place. Like if you example, like some of my friends are in Nokuchiatal, but the work actually is being done, which is of prime importance to any organization, right? Firms are insulated from committing to long-term obligations like pensions and other emoluments when they provide short-term contract. Software and technological changes are taking away every human efforts and has also contributed to the gig economy. Rules of employment gains in the gig economy is driven by the flexible work schedules and the advent of cutting-edge technologies, which has led to the emergence of highly connected mobile workforce. In fact, millennials are at the forefront of the gig economy revolution the world over. Let's move on to the next section of my presentation, in which I will deliberate on the Indian gig economy. The gig economy in India, when we talk about it, India's gig sector is expected to grow to USD $455 billion. And that is projected by the year 2024 at a forecast of 17% CAGR. Now let's explore the occupational areas of gig economy workers in India. In the next slide, you'll see the people, those who are professional people, people, those who are creative or into administrative services, they form approximately 59% of this workforce. People, those who are professional, personal and skilled manual services, they form around about 33%. People into driving and delivery services formulate 16% of this workforce. In going on to the next slide, when we talk about the Indian gig companies, there are quite a lot of startups which have started doing very well and have received many rounds of funding too. That primarily talks about the potential and the power which they have. The Indian examples, as you can see on the screen, are Dunzo. Right? We would like to mention over here eCart. When we go into the food sector, the Swiggy and Zomato are nowadays a household name. And when we go into transportation and parking, we have got Meru Cabs and the Ola Cabs, which are over here. In the next slide, you will see that 56% of the new employment in India is being generated by the gig economy and has got 15 million workers now. In the next slide, I would like to talk about, there is no doubt that gig economy has emerged as a silver lining for the economy because there are very few jobs which are being created in the organized sector, right? And next slide, I would like to talk about the gig economy can create millions of jobs in India. With a large working population of over 500 million, India needs to create jobs at a lightning pace. Given the impetus, the platform-based gig economy can generate millions of jobs for sure. In the next slide, I would like to talk about that the gig economy offers attractive alternative to the conventional employment, primarily because gig economy provides employment to millions of migrant workers in urban India. Gig economy is generating both blue collar and white collar manpower approximately at the rate of 56%. And National Capital Delhi is the top destination for migrant workers. Yes, we are delighted to see that women participation is increasing in the gig economy. The concept of gig economy, going on to the next slide, is based upon livelihood is not alien to India. The range of skilled personnel have for over the years have offered their services based upon word of mouth, which is direct selling, in which direct selling has a head start and its turnover today is USD 2.47 billion. Also, I would like to highlight how neighborhood referrals and past reputation have generated self-employment, primarily in the sectors of in-home improvement, construction industry, fashion, saloons, etc. In the next slide, I would like to talk about India has emerged as the 5th largest gig economy behind US, China, Brazil, and Japan, right? And in my opinion, this is definitely going to grow very, very big, because when we talk about likes of Amazon, likes of Flipkart, or all these e-commerce companies, they have set up a benchmark, they have set up a standard. People expect the delivery to happen in few days' time, right? But with likes of Swiggy and Zomato, where the food is or the services are delivered within half an hour or so, this has actually not only spoiled the appetite of our Indian consumers, but this has led to actually a potential that this sector is going to grow very, very big. In fact, in my own company, when we are now talking about our strategy for the next decade, because we are now into 2021, services is one of the major things which we are also looking at on how exactly we are going to offer services in competition to the world majors. Why? Because people are now used to having that kind of services levels and the products delivered to them. With this kind of a thing which is happening in the country, there is no way gig economy is going to lag behind. It is going to offer, own working hours, choose where they would like to work, and choose how much they would like to earn. I know of people, if their target is they're going to earn around about 1,500 rupees per day, they might be a Uber and an Ola driver, or they might be doing something else. And after that, if they have earned that kind of a money, they call it a day. Believe me, in my days, this kind of an option was never available. And I had at least never thought that we would be facing this kind of a economy. But that's really interesting. And that's the reason I think so. We have got so much experts over here from whom I would like to hear, and I would like to learn what exactly their reports and their experience about gig economy. So rather than talking much about it, I would be in a listening mode to learn from you today, guys. But when we go on to the next slide, I would like to talk to you about how exactly India is poised for a gig economy. A huge change actually is being witnessed in mindset of Indians. Traditionally, Indians have valued stability over excitement when it comes to their profession. However, now the trend has witnessed a paradigm shift. Statistics are very promising to dwell upon. 1 in every 4 freelancers is from India. Millennials are fueling the gig economy in India, primarily because we have more millennial population than China and US put together. I would like to take you on to the next slide, which is the slide number 21. Next slide, please. Slide number 21, please. Haryana and Punjab, Haryana, Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat, and Telangana, are the states which have most growth opportunities for gig workers, right? And gig economy and the current COVID-19 situation, if we talk in the next slide, the recent critical situation has seen a boom in the gig economy. From being food, grocery, medicine, and delivery agents to the essential economy frontrunners, gig workers have been providing both essential and non-essential services, ensuring contactless deliveries and traveling empty streets as the virus takes over the world. Moving on to the next slide, gig economy complements direct selling industry because it empowers women, it provides flexible working hours, is a source of income for students, and has got no restriction on entry. The benefits are, the time flexibility enables gig workers to associate with direct selling companies in their spare time, and it benefits like maternity leave, life and disability cover, and old age protection, and life and disability cover and the old age protection. Primarily maybe Provident Fund and the employee injury benefits. I would now like to end my presentation with a brief information on the new labor code, the code on Social Security 2020, which absorbs the existing 29 labor laws to acknowledge the gig workers as a new occupational category in the country. And I must say that's a big recognition. The brief salient features of the labor code are: it recognizes and defines a gig worker on the basis of vulnerability of the assigned work. It recognizes and secures a new kind of work which has emerged in the backdrop of emergence of the gig economy in the mainstream. It provides for numbers of hours and days a gig worker should work. It also has provision for overtime. It is also applicable to companies having more than 10 independent contractors. And here I would like to sum it up with my concluding remarks. Now I look forward to the privilege of hearing more informational statistics which will be presented by the panelists. Their views will give impetus, momentum, and synergy to our discussions during the webinar and provide positive outlook to our. Thank you so much. With that, I would like to hand over back to Chavi. Over to you, Chavi.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bali. It was quite interesting, especially coming from your own experience about, how everything has evolved over the last so many years. And now we are talking about, flexible hours, which were probably our demands when we were much younger, asking companies to be a little bit more lenient towards us. Anyhow, moving forward, our next speaker is going to be Kanishk. Before we start the video of the report, I would like to introduce Kanishk to everyone. Kanishk has over 12 years of professional experience in management consulting, and he's consulted he was with KPMG, IMS Health, Ernst & Young, and Oracle Solution Services, and all these names are are big names to reckon with. So I'm sure Kanishk has gained a lot of experience, which we would probably get to know and see in the report which he's about to release. So before moving forward, I would also like to talk more about Primus. Primus key clients are both in public and private sectors, like investment, promotion, regulatory, simplification, industrial infrastructure, and promotion of public policy. So there's a lot of value addition which Primus as an organization, and of course from the presentation and the research document from Kanishk, we all will hear. So now I'm first requesting the technical team to share the video with us so that we all do a formal release by clapping our hands to ensure that we all are connected to each other. So over to
Ma'am, you are
Hi,
on mute.
Chavi, should I start from here? Chavi, I think you are on mute.
hello everyone. Everybody can hear me?
Yes. Yeah, you are audible.
Yes.
So sorry for the confusion. Now, so moving forward, I was actually requesting the technical team to share the video with us.
Ma'am, video play कर दिया था.
Okay. So now yes, it's over to you, Kanishk. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And good afternoon, everyone.
From our end.
No, it's absolutely fine. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I come to the subject of discussion, let me start by thanking ASSOCHAM for taking this initiative to talk about this interesting and not much talked about subject, gig economy. And obviously it is a matter of pride and immense pleasure to collaborate with ASSOCHAM to work on this report and give our research insights as Primus. So this ASSOCHAM Primus report is an attempt to understand the gig economy, focusing on the impact of COVID-19 on the gig segment in India especially. We have tried to present the means to address the challenges and pursue the opportunities created by this pandemic to enable a forward-looking work culture and that results in a large-scale employment, income generation, and fuel the ambitions of a national goal, $5 trillion economy by 2025. So clearly, as we also saw in that presentation, if we have this ambitious goal, it cannot be fulfilled purely by the conventional jobs in that sense. So just to put things in perspective, sharing a few data points, establishing the importance of gig economy for the country. It is obviously accepted and established phenomena in the West world, wherein about 36% of the US workforce is engaged as gig economy. And when we talk about India, there are around 15 million freelance workers engaged in several kind of projects in different sectors. And as per the latest economic survey of 2021, India is in fact emerged as one of the largest countries for flexi staffing or gig and platform workers, due to obviously prevalent use of e-commerce platforms, retailing, and that digital transformation, which has contributed to the massive opportunities for these workers. So obviously it's a massive opportunity, though lying untapped, and more so in the current context when unemployment rate is significantly high. Companies are still taking time to come out of this COVID shock and continue to shrink their workforce. Gig economy gains much more relevance than ever. Digital transformation, as I was sharing earlier as well, especially as a result of COVID, wherein virtual meetings are the new normal, augurs really well to catapult gig economy to the next level. However, still in India, it is still initial days, early days. Gig economy is still at a nascent stage, and marred by various kind of challenges at fundamental level itself, wherein we need to clearly understand the gig economy. There are finer differences to be understood. Gig workers, they should not be misunderstood as unorganized workers. So obviously their needs, their requirements, work culture is significantly different as a result. So the gig workforce obviously currently has limited employment rights like minimum wages, health benefits, and so on and so forth. Wherein code of security, which recently I think was announced by Government of India, is trying to address certain things, but still the devil lies in the details, and we still need to wait and watch for the implementation of that code. So yes, government clearly needs to come out with some more appropriate regulations to protect the workforce of this gig economy, and this code of security is definitely a welcoming step, and wherein the Ministry of Labor and Employment released the draft rules for invoking the code of social security passed by the parliament in September last year, wherein companies involving gig workers will now be asked to contribute towards a social security fund. But as I said, in India there are multiple acts, multiple regulations, multiple policies, but it is really the implementation on the ground wherein the real challenge lies. So we still need to see how it pans out. For example, uh, companies, because they will be contributing to the social social security fund, may end up not engaging gig workers as much. In when they have to any which ways pay out social security contribution, they might as well employ people on payrolls. So what I'm saying is, yes, we would still wait and watch how it pans out, and cost to the companies may also may increase to engage these gig workers. But clearly, a developing country like India, the potential advantages of the gig economy are going to be numerous, particularly for women. It really presents a great option for women, towards their financial freedom, and as a route to come back to the professional world. So workplaces, what our research with ASSOCHAM says, that workplaces will continue to go under this cultural change, where the acceptance of gig workers would be much higher than ever, and gig economy, in fact, will become the new normal, and working full time will become a rarity. That is what we believe. So that's pretty much from my side, Chavi. I this is how I would want to conclude, and happy to hear from fellow panelists.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Kanishk. It is very interesting. And, listening to two most important facts, which I learned from your, interaction today with us, that, it is not an unorganized sector. And it is such a delight to listen to that, everybody's contribution to the economy is being valued. And the second, that, most of us in the future will not work full time and will choose our timings is a big bliss. So I really look forward to have more interactions with each one of you. And now I actually request, our professor from the panelist, Mr. Saurabh Agarwal from the Indian Institute of Finance, that, what does he has to talk about the gig economy and share his knowledge on the subject matter. So looking forward to you, Saurabh, from your point of view, from the academia, as to what is going to be the future of gig economy.
Thank you, Chavi. I must thank ASSOCHAM, the entire organizing team, including Mr. Rojora, Ankit, and all who have worked tirelessly to putting this team together, all the respected fellow panel speakers, and also to all the participants who are taking out time to discuss this very important issue. But if I go to the history, how it was created, the word gig actually was evolved, by jazz performers, and it actually means performance. It's a slang for job. It's a short-term job which we think. The minute you search this slang and you try to find out synonyms of this word, you will see temps, balance change, short-term, independent, efficiency, remote work, millennials, projects, digital, life trend, flexibility work, non-traditional work. These are the key words which are defining the gig economy worker. And actually, when I see it's spreading, like we have not heard, but Book My Chotu, it's a website which participants can go to and get tasks. Internationally, we have a similar thing called Task Rabbit. I'm not going to repeat the names as already informed. We have Tutor Vista in academia. You could be teaching as well as you could be doing tutoring. So Kaplan is another player which is doing this. Practically, why would you go ahead for it? You would go ahead for it for autonomy and control, earning while seeking a better job. So for example, I want to seek another job, but still I want to earn. So I might be preparing for something like a CAT or a GRE or a GMAT, but still I want to do some work to support myself. Balancing career and family needs. I'm actually an example of gig economy worker. My wife is currently in University of Delhi because university opened on 1st, and I am sitting here at home, not only lecturing, but also watching my two very small kids. One is 4 years, one is 11 years. So that's the balancing. And I'm also a full-time professor. It is become a necessity. Necessity is the mother of invention. Why? It may become the only way you can actually make an income. And sometimes some people may want some extra income by the side. So it's actually, it's plethora of opportunities in grocery delivery, ride sharing, restaurant food delivery, physical tasks. Old people who can't do their tasks, doing physical tasks like their lawns, car rental, parking rental, tutoring, dog sitting, making the dog walk, surveys, technical teams are getting surveys done, selling old stuff, babysitting, investing advice, home rental, authoring, blog writing, designing, blog writing, proofreading, selling photos. Example is, if we see Times of India, Hindustan Times, Shutterstock, Getty Images, specific talents, as you said, it's not unorganized. Specific talents, animation, nail paint, coding, web development, car mechanic. These are all examples of specific people who have specific talent, and that can be used for developing good income. YouTube, Twitch, Dailymotion, app development, also now voice calling, chatbot support, telecalling, back-end support. Now, all what you need to be part of this economy is a smartphone, laptop, and skill. So first came the Skill India movement, and then comes this gig economy. So all you can actually, you can get the job listing, you can direct recruitment through the app. So actually, if one may say it is new, but traditionally also I see experts were already doing it, business professionals were already doing it, influencers were already doing it, artists were already doing it, advocates and doctors were already doing it. It has actually spread in a very big way currently into other professions just after March 2020 because of the corona pandemic. It has not only a very big impact on Indian economy, but 30% of US workers are part of gig economy. And the reason why it is important and why HOCHM, as managing committee member of HOCHM, I feel it needs to be focused on, this economy grows 3x times more. It is less regulated, more freedom. In India, we saw it will be estimated at 455 billion, growing at 17% CAGR. Wherever economy will go at 7%, this part of the economy we can grow at 17%. What is the future? The future is sharing economy. It may happen, I may have something, I may need the services of somebody else, and I'll share what I have to share with him. So it will lead to more economies like sharing economy, gift economy, barter economy, and not to lose out on Bitcoin and Dogecoin economy, whereby you will not be paid in traditional salary, you will not be paid traditionally what you get monthly, but you will be paid in a very difficult manner and a different manner. But this economy has its own lacuna. It has very stressful cash flows. In 1 month, for example, you can make a lot of money. For example, myself, last 10 days I was at IIM Rohtak for recruit. So for that 10 days they paid me very well. But certain flows are much better than stressed flows. So this is something very important. So this is very tense. Secondly, all participants of this economy need to be doing constant upskilling and constant reskilling. That is why we are having Coursera and many such upskilling platforms that are coming up. Degree will not matter. What matters is what you have in your gray cells. India has taken a leapfrog in this, and we are saying there should be protection of minimum wages, health benefits, sick leave, and that is why we had the Social Security Code requiring 1% of the aggregator's annual turnover to be given for the welfare of the gig workforce and the unorganized workforce. But the growth is lopsided, not in all states. Only the urban people are taking benefit. Haryana, Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Gujarat, Telangana, these are the states which are benefiting. I think we must see to it that like the growth, despite all the big 5-year plans, we just changed the name to Niti Aayog. This should spread to the poorest and the neediest of all. Even if we can incorporate the unorganized sector, this is very important. There are many good platforms coming up like FRAP, Internshala, Wajin. These are all coming. But before you leap into it, as a finance guy, I would say get a full-time job initially, at least for 15 years of your life. Create a very good corpus in the sense you should put at least 30% of your amount into equities and gold, at least 30% of your amount in debt earning securities like fixed deposits, corporate bonds, and now in budget 2021, even in the government of India treasury bills, 30% in real estate and 10% for contingency. It is not easy to be a gig economy worker. I work for 2 institutions. I every day to take 2 hours of lecture. I sit on the board of 2 government organizations, 1 HOCM. I actually am mentoring a host of other institutions. I take visiting faculty lectures at IIM Rohtak, at FMS, and at the same time, I have my own furnishing export business also. So it's not easy to handle so many things and handle your children also. Gig economy is here to stay. I am a perfect example. But at the end of the day, you might feel stressed, all the strings of the hair are pulling, somebody asking for their question paper, somebody asking for presentation, somebody asking for something else. And if you do not meet your deadlines, your name will get spoiled. So I think I must congratulate ASSOCHAM to emotionally present my feelings also, along with a balanced financial view. Thank you, Chaviji. I could see you smiling. I hope all the participants have enjoyed their this. It is here to stay. It can't go anywhere, but we have to take the best of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Saurabh. This was wonderful and very, very, very exciting. I am so delighted that from a professor, the line which you used, degrees will not matter. The work and output and the task performed by all of us would matter more. That's such a big bliss. Why I'm sharing an example. I know we have a possibility, we have little paucity of time, but still I would like to share this example with which I have experienced myself. Almost about 20 years back, when I was taking my daughter for admission, I was asked that why did I chose to study a BA on an online format or a School of Correspondence Studies. And there were questions about my academic background, primarily because I had chosen to do my studies over from Delhi University course, primarily because I wanted to earn myself on a very big start. And the question came on whether I was financially sound or not, where my family was okay or not, and things like that. And this happened in one of the best schools in Delhi with the principal interaction as to why I did not take a full-time study. So coming from there, it was something which really helped me to link up everything. And now we are looking at that, yes, I definitely know the studies are important, degrees are important, but to a certain extent. Finally, what will be looked at in the economies to come will be how we perform. So not taking too much time, thank you so much. It was a very interesting talk which you shared with us. Kudos to you that you are actually a live example of the gig economy. Now let's move to Dharam. Dharam, thank you so much for joining and sparing time to join us today. Before I ask you to share your views, I would like everybody to know a little bit about you. Everyone knows that you are country head of WeWork business operations, but you've been with the organization since 2017. And you have also, prior to joining WeWork, you had founded Wedwise, a platform to discover and book wedding vendors. So that's a big plus, because everybody gets crazy, especially the Indian weddings are a huge festival activity which actually contributes a lot to economy. In fact, when we talk about wedding economy, it's a huge economy and produces a lot of income for the GDP as well, though it is not numbered, but I'm sure it does a lot of work. So apart from this, Dharam has also worked in Beacon Capital Partners and also Deloitte Consulting. Dharam has also done a lot of studying. So Warren School, and he's from Warren School. He's done administration, and he's also done bachelor's in computer science from University of Texas. And now I'm sure that he's his own entrepreneur. So Dharam, let's first listen to you that how this education has helped you to be what you are today, and how the gig economy is going to supplement the future of India. Over to you, Dharam.
Thanks, Chavi. I would have loved to talk a lot about my education, but as our professor said that degrees are not important anymore, so I'm not going to talk much about it. Okay. But I fully resonate with what he said. It doesn't matter where you study and how prestigious your university is. At the end of the day, it's what you take out of it. I know a lot of my classmates who haven't taken anything from it, and then I know a lot of people who have done some online courses and are have really upskilled themselves a lot. So I'm fully on the same page. And thanks a lot to everyone behind organizing this and getting all of us together. I also feel quite strongly about the gig economy, and very happy to be a part of this panel. I just want to start out with saying that the outbreak of COVID-19 has actually led to a massive shift in the way people work, and it's really actually altered, whether we realize or not, it's actually really altered our lifestyles, and it's really altered how people think about employment, about office, and at WeWork we see it on a daily basis. And I think this has actually enabled technology platforms, freelancers and gig workers are absolutely a part of that. And I think because of this shift in the way of thinking, it has further accelerated the acceptance of gig workers. I think a lot of numbers have been discussed, so I'm not going to get into how big the economy is or what the growth rate is, but needless to say, those are very big numbers. The growth potential is massive. And as multiple of us have already said, gig economy is here to stay. It's going to grow. There are lots of benefits both for the employers and for the employees. So it's absolutely here. Now, I think it's sort of up to us to figure out how we adopt it. How do we make sure that gig workers are protected? And, you know, with all the benefits, we don't sort of take advantage of them. Right now, you know, a lot of people think of them as independent contractors. We know about the case of Uber, and, you know, in UK, how like Uber drivers were considered as not independent workers, but self-employed contractors. But if you like see what happened in California, complete juxtaposition, like Uber and Lyft were able to, and even some of these app-based food delivery guys were able to classify all of their all of the people on their platform as independent contractors, right? So there is lots going on, and I think from an you know, what I personally believe is there is sort of no one size fits all policy. Every sort of country, every state has to figure out. But I think it's important that certain regulations do happen in this space so that we protect the interest of both the parties involved, both the employer as well as the gig worker. Right. In the Indian scenario, again, you know, we've multiple people have spoken, but we have lots of, you know, India is the 5th largest country with flexi staffing. So there is a very important need of us sort of creating some regulation around this. You know, we've heard, because we follow it, that Labour Ministry is already forming up a scheme that will provide minimum social security, which includes pension, provident fund, health insurance, and unemployment benefits to these gig workers, which we all sort of think are very good. You know, some of the, you know, we sort of, from our perspective, I think it's a welcome change, and I absolutely think that whether it's the Department for Promotion of Industry and Internal Trade, you know, we believe they are working on making some compulsory rules for online marketplaces, and I think these are all very good things. I think they're moving towards making sort of an online database, or making GST compulsory for freelancers working on Urban Clap, House Joy, and apps such as that, right? So I think all those things are sort of welcome change, and I really think that the government, we really think that the government should sort of support this. You know, from the other important part where, you know, co-working players like, or flexible workplace providers like us and other players in the market, they also play a very big role in this. I think one of the challenges that gig workers have, which is especially unique to a place like India, is we don't have very big homes, or we don't necessarily have the best infrastructure, right? Especially to someone who's using the gig economy to sort of plug himself and make their most of their income through that. So where we sort of really come in is, you know, we can provide amazing grade A infrastructure at very flexible terms, right? We don't need, a gig worker doesn't need to come in and sign a 1-year contract or even a 6-month contract. You know, for example, we've launched a new product called as On Demand, where essentially a person can buy a 1-day pass for as little as 500 rupees. And whether they're in Bombay, Gurgaon, Bangalore, Hyderabad, anywhere, they can access any of our locations. And some of the other guys are also doing things like that, right? So I think in a place like India, where the gig economy is growing, having supporting, you know, we also believe that we play an important role in supporting this economy. And you know, I think we sort of encourage and we hope that the government works hand in hand with a lot of private enterprises and really comes up with robust rules which will support this people engaged in this economy, whether it's part-time, whether it's full-time, and really sort of help it flourish and move forward.
Okay. Dharam, that was quite interesting, but, you know, I would like to know more about, you know, what is your experience so far over the last, you know, especially 2020, so that we can have a little bit more interaction during the course of our discussion. instead of just listening to each other, if you could just give some light to that as to how it felt, and was it a huge work? And now, because there are a lot of, lot of mothers and lot of, they are wanting to go for a WeWork because they do not want so many times tuition children to come at home. They want to have, have a place, a center where they can go and hire for one day in a week or something like that. So is there any trends you have seen which is a change? Because all of this gives a stimulus to the gig economy, and that's what we're talking about. So getting some actual information would be really delightful.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share. When the pandemic hit, to be completely honest, all of us were caught off guard and we didn't know what to expect. What we saw sort of very quickly, I would say within 30 to 40 days, is a lot of the SMEs and the mid-sized companies and the startups and a lot of the freelancers, right? And that whole population very quickly sort of leave and just sort of, park themselves in the house and sort of, even break contracts and all of that, right? So we, in a way, about 55 to 60% of our membership base are actually enterprises. So the Microsofts and the Morgan Stanleys of the world, right? Like the big companies that all of us have heard of. Our smaller contingent, which is these freelancers, startups, smaller companies, they sort of got up and left almost overnight. And what we anticipate would happen is that, as things started getting back to a bit more normal in October, November, we expected the enterprise take up to go up. But what we've actually seen is these smaller companies, these startups have actually come back to us sooner. So the traction that we've seen from, starting, I would say October, November of last year, is a lot of mid-sized, small-sized companies have come back. A lot of them were existing members who had to leave because they had no idea what was happening in the world. But they've all come back. They've realized that things are not like the world hasn't ended. They do need a workplace. A company which had maybe 10 desks with us have come back and say, we'll start off with 4 desks. And then every month we'll keep adding 1 desk, 2 desks more or whatnot. There has been a shift from more premium locations to slightly cheaper locations from a cash flow, to conserve cash flow. A lot of founders have come back and said, I want to start coming in. My team of 5 people are still working from home, but let me get comfortable. I want to be more productive. I want to make sure that my team is being productive and, over a period of time. So I think it's been a trickle, and the trickle is like now slowly increasing, like we are seeing it on a weekly basis. The product that I spoke about, something that we didn't have pre-COVID, was just that 1-day pass. We launched it about 3 months ago, and that's been a massive hit. A lot of people, a lot of freelancers just use that on a daily basis. They'll use it twice or thrice a week. They will use it for half a day when they have a meeting. Meeting rooms are in a lot of demand where people just want to come in and do a meeting and maybe hang out for another half an hour and then go. So there is definitely a lot of traction, people coming back in. People are realizing that things are picking up, and but they are not coming in and saying, okay, I have a team of 10 right now, but show me an office for 20 people because I know I'm going to expand, right? They are saying that if we are 10, let me start off with 5 people, and then maybe over the next 3-4 months, I'll keep adding. And someone like us really provides that, right? Like you can literally move into the next door office where there are 2 more desks, or move to the next door office which has 5 more desks. So people are understanding that this flexible option exists, and they're fully making use of that.
Great, that was very interesting, and it is for all of us, because we do keep on getting requests that if we can partner and things like that. So definitely this is going to be our future. In fact, a lot of smaller organizations have shut down their operations like offices, and are looking at moving to co-working spaces as well. So now I'm going to invite request Sharath to join us and share his experience about the gig economy and what he has to say. Before Sharath speaks and articulates his opinion and views on the subject, I would like to talk to you about Sharath a little bit briefly. He has 15 years of diverse experience across businesses. He's in leadership, in management, operations, strategy. So he's been, again, a wide range of sectors in India. He, of course, he loves to travel. So I guess we will get to know more about the gig economies around the world, since he's loves to travel, and he's an engineer by profession. and is also from an IIM alumni, an MBA from there. So now I request Sharad to give us a detail about what are his opinions about the gig economy and what is the way forward. Most important, how are we all going to get ensure that we are interconnected with all of this and benefit to one and all. So over to you, Sharad.
Thanks, Chavi. Thanks, ASSOCHAM, my fellow panelists, and all the participants who joined today. Very excited to be participating here, and it was lovely listening to all the fellow panelists. Just to add to what Chavi said, I'm currently the COO for Oyo Rooms, and I take care of the hotels business. I was previously running the workspace business for Oyo. So kind of resonates what Dhadam talked about on what we're seeing on that side as well, and I'll talk about that. And I also head the diversity and inclusion initiative for Oyo across Asia, South Asia. So that kind of also, allows me to look at it from a perspective of how this impacts the, our women workers in India. So I think I'll talk about two things. First, if you look at Oyo's own journey, right? We started out in 2013, and in the last 7-8 years, the idea was to kind of transform real estate and to use a lot of technology as we build our products and kind of become a marketplace for providers and for consumers to kind of come together. And gig economy has been, we are hearing about it a lot more now because of COVID, but it's always been at a very core of our business model, right? So we have always leveraged availability of great talent for piecework and to kind of be able to not restrict them to location, especially in a business like hospitality, which is spread out across cities. It kind of helps. So even in the last 7 years, right, we have had social media influencers who have kind of is a very large program that we run, and they kind of help us discover places. Photographers, a lot of our contents that you see on Oyo websites is completely done by gig workers who make up this content on piecemeal. A lot of our software engineers, a lot of hotel property managers. So when we came in, we realized that budget hotels actually find it very difficult to run hotels on their own, and what they lack is just a good expert to help them run the place, right, who understands basic management. And they can't afford a full-time worker, right? But there was no solution. And what we could bring in because of technology platform and because of this role of an aggregator was to provide that service as a gig, right? And a lot of our RevPAR improvements that our hotels saw was driven by availability of good talent, doing it on a piecemeal basis, something that they can afford. Similar stories on the workspace side. Like Dharam said, we not only host a lot of such gig workers, but also the kind of community events that we do for our entire tenants, as you would say, or our clients is actually done by gig workers, and the variety of stuff that you can do, from yoga to file your taxes skill to a million of other things. We've had these experts come in, charge on a day basis, and be able to kind of impart a lot of skills. And similarly in weddings, we run India's one of the largest digital weddings company called Weddings.in, where again a lot of our decorators, F&B people, photographers are completely available on the platform on a gig basis. So I think one important thing that I would like to tell everyone is that we have to understand why we have reached where we have reached before I go into where we're going forward. I think 2-3 revolutions are very important for this to kind of culminate. One is, I think, the rise of devices becoming cheaper, so cell phones, smartphones, and computers becoming accessible and affordable for everyone. Second big one is the way that the social media has come together, which I think was wave 2, which kind of coincided, but it kind of really exploded in the last 3-4 years, is that everybody today is available on some of such platforms, be it even something like a TikTok or Facebook before that, where they can actually be felt and be able to communicate directly with the marketplace. And I think lastly, COVID now has just kind of exploded because the mental stigma around working from home, of doing a gig, has kind of gone away completely. So I think these three are very important waves of transformations that have kind of swept through the the world, and I'm very happy with India. And that's how for us, for example, now at OYO, we're trying to integrate the entire essentials of a gig economy in our full-time workforce. So we're saying, can we offer flexibility and mobility to our full-time employees? Can we make them work on different pieces which they might have interest in, and not define roles, geographies, office spaces very rigid, in a very rigid manner, but try to make it fluid, because that's what your millennials want. And 80 to 90% of workforce in OYO is below 30, young workers, very ambitious, highly skilled, want to try out different things. Post COVID, we've just been able to kind of do that for them, and they're kind of responding very strongly to those changes. So I think, as I look at the future, and I know people would talk about regulation, people would talk about, how do you kind of give them minimum wages, how do you control? I'm a thorough capitalist and a very big optimist. I think marketplace will find a way to deal with these things, right? Government would of course talk about minimum wages, talk about skilling, all that, and I think that's good, it should happen. But I think the markets would balance, and like somebody said, with 50% of the future jobs coming in for millennials, that's the kind of workforce, highly ambitious, they have their own mind, they know what they want to do. The entire skilling industry and the entire employment industry will move in this direction. I'm very confident that this will become the main place. One of the professors talked about doing a stable job and earning enough and then going. I think while that's a very good aim, I have a very different view that the whole world will, in the next decade, move to this model where traditional jobs and will just go. Now it's a tough world, and then that change sounds scary, but to everybody who's listening in today, if you imagine that world in 10 years and start working on it today, that I think is in everybody's best interest, because a lot of them hearing must be young workers, right? And they don't have the luxury me and some of my fellow panelists had of getting into a 9-to-5 job first. And I would say, skill yourself, right? Look around and see what are the jobs of the future, right? What kind of industries are coming up, and where do your interest lies. And I think geography will become meaningless, your background will become meaningless, and your ability to learn it and to start participating will kind of go up. So just embrace it, and kind of think of this as a given in the days to come, and I think you will be in a good place, because companies like OYO and I'm sure WeWork and others are already moving to that model, because it saves money, it makes our people happier, and it makes our customers and partners happier. So that's where the entire world would move. Thanks everyone for a patient hearing.
Thank you, Sharath. Yes, it was quite interesting to listen that, how your company has, come back after, because tourism is still, we are still indoors and not everybody is venturing out. But just to add to, your delights that, the airspace, especially the flying, has started quite extensively. In fact, lot of consumers who were using trains earlier have now shifted to the airplanes, and that is seeing a lot of shift. Because if we look at the entire space of tourism industry, and especially when you are looking at using trains, buses, or the other modes of moving out and having a nice time, we are seeing a lot of shift to the aeroplanes in a big major way. In fact, India at the moment is still very nascent, though it is a third number when it talks about number of people who take planes, but it is mostly because a lot of people take planes every week, and it's just 5% of Indians who have actually sat in the planes. So that is going to change now, and it is going to change very quickly. That again is going to contribute a lot to the gig economy and also to the tourism industry. So that's good news for your industry. These were some latest figures I had handy with me. So now moving on, I would now request Amit, the Chief Executive Officer of OLX Autos. And Amit comes up with a lot of other things as well. He's an entrepreneur, he's a business leader, and he's also a speaker. And that is very interesting. So it would be very interesting to listen from that point of view as to, you know, how you are integrating all these three aspects of being an entrepreneur, being a business leader, and also a speaker. So let's hear from you, Amit. Amit, that, you know, as to what you are going to share with us about you know, what's happening right now. And of course, you know, I'm not going to talk much about your education background. You are from ISB. That's a good enough thing for all of us to know. So moving on to you, Amit, it is the mic is all yours.
Thank you, Chavi, and thanks to the fellow panelists and ASSOCHAM for organizing this. Let me start with a small story, and then this story is of a young kid born in Rajasthan to lower middle class parents. The husband is a banker, the father of the kid, and the mom is a homemaker, typical religious lady, and the father is working as a clerk and as an officer in the bank. And it's a lower middle class family. The father got educated, and they are short on means. So the parents are trying to figure out what best can we do for our kids' future and secure it. So the father pushes the kid to really study hard in whatever means possible. The father takes a place in Kota, which is the education city, and where a lot of engineers really come out. And he sends his wife and both his kids to Kota so that the kids can get coaching in Kota. And then, you know, there is a lot of pressure to really become an engineer because the father feels that I don't have money to build a business for these kids. So it's better that they become engineers and have a good 9-to-5 job. And the kids start to believe that, and the kid really studies hard, even if he likes or doesn't like it, really doesn't matter because he's scared, right? If I become an engineer, I have a life. If I don't become an engineer, then so I will probably be you know, a vegetable seller or something like that. You know, that's the kind of fear you typically put in the minds of kids. The kid studies hard and becomes an engineer, picks up a 9-to-5 job in an FMCG company, works hard, grows, and becomes Amit Kumar, who I am in front of you. But let's understand what is that kid's wanting now. What does that kid want now? So this kid now wants that I become a gig economy worker and I become a consultant for the startups around me. So I've been building so many startups in past. I become a consultant where I have the freedom to work as much as I want, whenever I want, so that I have freedom and some money coming in. I think the transformation here from the mentality of wanting to get a 9-to-5 job which is stable and gets money every day or every month in your bank account to wanting to become a gig economy worker is the important thing to note. Each one of us, a lot of us, and Mr. Bali was talking about it, right? That in my time, this kind of a freedom was not available. This freedom has two aspects to it. One is the mental block, and the second is the social stigma around being a gig worker. And I think fundamentally these things are changing around us. And that is what are going to be the fundamental factors which will propel how the gig economy shapes up in this country. Let me take one more quirky example. And I was talking to a dear friend, and he was telling me that there is a batchmate of his from engineering institution. What he does is every day 5-6 hours he plays rummy on one of the games and makes enough to really make his living. Again, a gig economy thing, right? That's not a conventional 9-to-5 job to really make your living. I think concepts of how you work, what you work for, and how you make money are fundamentally being questioned. And the answer at some level is gig economy. US, I think a lot of numbers have been shared. Around 50% of their economy, plus minus a few percentage give and take, is expected to be with freelancers. Eventually, that is how most economies are going to shape up. India has 470 million workers, and that is bigger than US and China combined. So I think as an economy, we need to have a forward-looking view as far as the gig economy is concerned. As I spoke about in my story as well, there are 2 or 3 driving factors which will push us in this direction. One of them, which I sort of highlighted with the first 2-3 minutes, is better social acceptance. Today, to become an entrepreneur or a gig economy worker is something to flaunt about. When I was coming out of my engineering college, and I was again that 9-to-5 guy, to be employed in a startup or to choose a gig economy job, and this I'm talking just 14-15 years ago, was seen as, okay, I think this guy did not do a good job in his interviews and that's why he's going there. I am the smart one. I have got a 9-to-5 job. But now I realize that the guys who actually went on the other side are probably happier and made more money also. So I think that's the shift that we are seeing all around us, which is better social acceptance. Fundamentally, I also see that while we are in India and we have such a huge mass of freelancing/gig economy workers, this is opening the world to us also. At some level, what we have to understand is that India became a hub for outsourcing and KPO because we had a massive English-speaking population, which was able to do a lot of stuff for the developed economies of Europe and US. That was being done in an institutional manner. The same will be done in the gig economy manner also. So now, today, with the help of a technology platform, a teacher sitting in Raipur or Raebareli or Visakhapatnam can be helping a kid in Kentucky or Chicago do his or her homework. And I think that also is going to be a massive opportunity which we are probably not looking at and exploiting as much as the potential is. I also accept that now English speaking is not just our advantage. There are other countries which have come up and have started to compete with us. Countries like Philippines, Bangladesh, some of those countries are coming up. But I think our educational system still gives us an edge in exploiting those opportunities, because the value arbitrage there, making money in dollars and then converting it into rupees, is always going to be a big motivator for people to really push themselves in that direction. I think the last driver that I want to talk about is now large corporates have also started accepting gig economy workers. And that shift is a very, very positive shift. So there are freelancers, there are gig economy people, specifically Professor spoke about in the creative domains or specialist domains, which are being used by large corporates to give specific inputs in a time-bound manner and push specific agendas internally. And analytics, machine learning, AI, some of these things, people have gone into gig economy and are doing a phenomenal job in supporting structured corporates fast-track their journey in these areas. Of course, again, a lot of numbers, but fundamentally, I treat gig economy similar to the telecom revolution that we as a country have seen. Telecom, and Mr. Bali can remember and imagine the 1998 to 2000 and today. Telecom would have definitely added at least a percentage to our GDP growth year on year. I think gig economy has that power built in itself for the next decade, and that's what makes me very optimistic about the future ahead. Thank you very much, Chavi, and the fellow panelists for a patient listening.
Absolutely, yes, Samit, your story was very interesting. It is a story from all of so many of us, having gone through, same kind of pressure at the point when it was required. The last point which you mentioned about, gig economy and taking a parallel from the telecom industry, definitely that's what is going to be, because there was a time when, when we had MTNL house phones and we would have to be delightful. In fact, there used to be, when I was a kid, probably 5-6 years old, probably we had one landline in among 5-6 houses, and that was considered like a big thing. So moving on from there, now we are looking at multiple phones, multiple lines, and looking at each number separately. So yes, definitely the future is going to be like that, and we look forward because each one of us is going to benefit from the power of the new economy which is developing. Now I request Mr. Deepak Yadav. He's the head operations for Country Delight, to share his opinion about the gig economy and also talk to us as to what change he is seeing over now, 2020, and what is he looking forward for 21-22, specifically with respect to the gig economy. Just to tell all the panelists and also our participants to know more as to who Deepak is. Deepak is from our very dear, National Delhi University, from Shri Ram College of Commerce, and he was an investment banker, an analyst, and after working there for a while, he started his own venture, Clado, which is a rental space. So we will definitely get to know more about the real estate from Deepak during the course of his views, which he's going to share with us on the specific industry he belongs to, and also about the gig economy. So over to you, Deepak. Looking forward to hearing your views on the sector.
Thank you, Chavi. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chavi. And I would like to thank you, Sucham, also for inviting me as a panelist, one of the panelists, and would also thank other co-panelists also who could take out time for this particular thing. So like particularly talking about this, so I have a different opinion on this thing, which I would like to talk about on the entire gig economy and like what would be the future of this. So like in our discussion previously also, we talked about the regulation, right? So within this, so it has certain benefit and there are certain drawbacks of this particular economy and traditional employment also. And what I believe is it is on the user or the gig worker to decide or to do a trade-off as to, because like both of the things have certain benefits and certain drawbacks. So it is particularly on them how do they do the trade-off by selecting one of them. And like, so coming to the regulation part also, so I was hearing in the welcome presentation where it was mentioned that Code of Security, Social Security is already given permission to in the Legislative Assembly. But I have a contrary view to it. So what happens is, so once you bring legislation into something, right, it might restrict the expansion of things. It might restrict the view with which you are thinking and all those things. So what I believe can be the possible solution of this is where people self-regulate themselves. So organization like SOCHM, FICCI, those organizations can come in place, and along with the other startups which are in this space, which primarily involves gig worker, they can ideally have a self-regulation thing instead of asking government or like having a strict legislation on this thing. See, the reason why I'm saying this entire gig economy is in transition phase. We are still moving into this gig economy. It is not where it is already established for quite a long time. So bringing legislation might not result in the overall reaping all the benefits of gig economy. So what I believe is that it might be a self-regulating thing where startups from different industry come together, and then they regulate, they work on self-regulation of things. Because like whenever you introduce any kind of a law, people do circumvent around the laws, right? They find ways to pass on the law. So as Mr. Krishan was also mentioning, that in case if you bring employment benefit to the gig worker, people or the companies might find a way to like overgo the provident fund liabilities and all those things. So what I would like, my take is that it can be left on the companies. They are mature enough, they are responsible enough to think about it, think about their workers. Like particularly in Country Delight also, I would take our example in this. So whosoever is working with us for the last mile delivery, right, we give complete flexibility, we have complete transparency as to what they are getting. So they get to see every penny. This is what they earn on a daily basis, this is what their incentive is, right? So he or she is very well aware as to what he or she will be getting. Secondly, we also have a platform through which they can they can raise their concerns, they can raise their grievances. So we have a dedicated team also for the redressals of those grievances. So as we believe, and we like implement this also, that we have complete transparency and we try to be responsible in handling all those workers, right? So ideally, the other startups can also function, and I'm sure they might be doing this. It is not that only we are doing in this particular industry. Like most of the startups are acting as an responsible unit of this entire ecosystem. So this is what I believe, that instead of asking government, we might come ahead and along with the organization like SOCHAM and FICCI to self-regulate. And then probably once we are out of this entire transition phase, we can obviously take the help of the government to legislate these things. So in one line, what I would suggest is government should not act as a regulator. It should be a facilitator in this entire transition which we are seeing right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, that was,
So this
yes,
is my take on this entire thing.
Absolutely on the dot. You know, if we take a parallel from you know, the IT industry, the IT wave we started some 30 odd years back. Initially, there was no government department or anything like that, and that was the time where IT industry grew. You know, there was another revolution prior to the telecom industry revolution which came. So, you know, and it is gradually, you know, the government started looking into it. We had more regulations. Yes, there were more restrictions as well. So I do agree with you to a large extent that yes, legislation should be friendly, but because I am from the regulatory side, regulations I believe are also a necessity. So we have to basically make sure that we find a balance
between
between that, you know, what has to function and how each of us benefit. It is not just for the companies or for any particular sector or a stakeholder, how all the sectors and how everybody integrates in the beneficial for one and all. Because if everybody benefits, our economy is going to reach to 5 trillion, and that's what we are looking at. So taking from there, you know, thank you so much, Deepak. It was definitely, you know, quite interesting. In fact, if you look at self-regulatory code, direct selling industry is almost 100 years old, and the first self-regulatory code came in 1977. So, and the industry, even in most economies in the world, is running on the self-regulatory code. So if there is anything which you know, anybody is interested to know more about, you know, direct selling and its self-regulatory code, please do let SOCHAM know, and I'm sure we would be very delighted to share that with all of you as well. So now I have a very special person as my next speaker, and she is you know, she's an HR enthusiast, and Kiran Bhatia Tandon. Kiran, welcome on board. I've been waiting all along to hear you, because you know, you are going to complement this entire show from your experience. I've just had a, you know, just a quick review I had on your background, and it's been delighted to know that you have worked in different sectors like HR, brand building, and HR is something where your passion and your heart lies. So over to you, Kiran. We look forward to hearing from you as to what you think and how it is helping you during these times, as to what exactly you're doing right now. I do understand that, you know, you are working with Loyalty Prime as their HR head, but over and above, how is the gig economy taking shape, and what flexibility things are you bringing new to the environment at your workplace, and the trends in the future for HR? So over to you, Kiran.
Thank you, Chavi, for the introduction, and thank you, SOCHAM and fellow panelists. It has been a great experience listening to all of you, and you have said it correctly. You know, what I'm going to speak is actually being covered by the experiences and the strategies of the eminent panelists here. So I'm going to sum that upon from an HR perspective here, and something which I have worked upon, something I have seen my HR colleagues do that. So if you see, the workplaces are changing, and so is the way the people function at workplaces. The future holds limitless possibilities for the gig economy, and as more as organizations and employees are inclining towards independent work dynamics. Dharam has mentioned about it, Sharad has mentioned about it. It won't be long before that the gig economy becomes the new normal. In fact, it is becoming a new normal, and working full-time will become a rarity. The need of the highly skilled gig workers is actually growing across geographies, with companies seeking more on-demand talent to fill critical workforce. So gone are the days wherein people say that I need a full-time worker. So now employers actually look for skilled workers but gig workers. So roughly 91% of the employers, they say that they need to rely on external workers, non-employees, to get the critical tasks done with their firms in the next 3 years. So it will be very soon, gig workers may simply be known as workers only. And during pandemic, they have been classified as essential workers as well, and because they are the ones who have put themselves at risk when everyone was not entitled to the basic employee rights such as sick leave. So if you see food deliveries or maybe in the pharma sector, so these are the people who were categorized as essential workers. Last year, approximately 5 months back, Spanish Supreme Court has also ruled out that food delivery workers, to all intents and purposes, are employees. Even a California judge also ordered that taxi apps like Uber and Lyft to upgrade their drivers from independent contractors to employee with benefits. These decisions could have actually major implications for the companies in the gig economy, and the business models are built on the premise that they can pay their workers for services rendered without the obligations of the traditional employer-employee relationships. So in this today's digital world, it is becoming essentially increasingly common for people to work remotely or from home. This facilitates independent contracting work, as many of those jobs do not require freelancers to come to office. Employers also have a wide range of applicants to choose from when they don't have to hire someone based on their proximity. So at Loyalty Prime, when I'm hiring people, we are an organization based in India. We are in Noida. So we are not limiting ourselves to hire only from the NCR geography or from India. So anybody who can support us in our time zone or in the client time zone, we are open to actually hire them. And also, economic reasons are also a factor in the development of gig economy. A lot of fellow panelists have spoken about it. Most times, employers cannot afford to hire full-time employees to do all the work they need to done. So they hire part-time employees to take care of busier times or specific projects. On the side of the employee, people often find that the need to move around or taking multiple positions to afford the lifestyle they want. People tend to change careers many times throughout their lives, and gig economy can be viewed as a reflection of this occurrence at a large scale. Now, while there has been a lot of benefits, there are some downsides as well, and not all employers lean towards hiring contracted employees. I have experienced that and spoken to a few HR colleagues who say that there are still some percentage of employers who still do not lean towards hiring contracted employees, and the gig economy trend can make it harder for full-time employees to develop fully in their careers, since temporary workers are cost effective to hire and more flexible in their availability. Now, workers who prefer traditional career path and the stability and the security that come within it are being crowded out only to some specific industries. For some people, the flexibility of working gigs can actually disrupt the work-life balance, sleep patterns, and activity of daily life. Flexibility in the gig economy is often meant to be to have workers to make themselves available anytime gig comes up, regardless of their other needs, and there must always be a hunt for the next gig. If in effect, actually, I would lastly say that because of the fluid nature of gig economy, transactions, relationships, long-term relationships between workers, employers, clients, vendors tend to erode. This actually can eliminate the benefits that flow from building long-term trust, customary practice, and familiarity with clients and employers. It could also discourage investments in relationship-specific assets that would otherwise to be very profitable to pursue, since no party has an incentive to invest in significantly in a relationship that only lasts until the next gig comes along. So the freelance economy revolves around hiring self-employed to undertake specific jobs in return for an agreed upon payment. So to conclude, gig economy has certainly led to the transformation of India's work culture, with enhanced flexibility and autonomy, overriding the traditional relationship shared between an employer and employee. And in a developing country like us, the potential advantages of the gig economy are going to be numerous, particularly for women. It portends to be an important step towards professional and financial freedom. Thank you so much for all the panelists for being patient listeners. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiran. And the fact that you specified that it will be a big boom to the women. Of course, yes. With Women's Day around the corner, I am sure that all the women who are joining, are listening to us today. Please, please upskill yourself, come back to the work, because we need you. Primarily because without you, India cannot reach 5 trillion in the timelines what we have given. So I really request all the women who are listening to us that please join us back. Look at your priorities, because by working and returning to workforce, you're not just helping yourself, you are helping the Indian economy. So we need you, and we need you now. To all the women over there who are listening to us. Now, lastly, I would call upon Mr. Ishan Singh Bedi. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Synchronized Logistics, which is a supply chain management organization. And Ishan has actually a lot of big visions on logistics, and I would really like to know about your vision, because way back in 1993, I started my career in DHL Worldwide Express in a logistic company. So from there to here, I would really like to listen to what Ishan has to say, because logistics is going to play, or in fact is already playing, a huge role in the entire gig economy, a multiplier effect which we are seeing. So over to you, Ishan. You have a big responsibility, since all of us have already shared our opinions and discussions. So let's see what you can add to the discussion so far. So over to you, Ishan.
Thank you, Chavi. Thank you, everybody, for having me here. I'm the last speaker, so it's been a long session, so I won't take too long. I'll just run through a lot of the points that have already been discussed and just try to come to some kind of a conclusion. The gig economy, it's here. It's going to be here forever. I mean, it's going to be here, and it's a change that's not going away anywhere. Kiran, I really agree with your point there that when it's only a transactional nature of doing some work, the corporate culture of investing in trainings and upskilling their employees totally is going to disappear, and the onus of upskilling and training one's own self is going to be on one own self, and that's like a big learning for me as well. I'll run through a few of the benefits which have been already mentioned by everybody about the gig economy. Of course, there's the optimal utilization of time and resources. People who had skills were at home can now work from home and contribute in ways where they were not being able to do earlier. There's huge increase in productivity because of this, so which is good for the overall economy. There's flexibility of work hours. That's one of the greatest joys of life, to be able to own your own time, and that's a big win, right? There's a possibility of working more to earn more. This was not possible 10 years ago, 15 years ago. We were restricted by the jobs we were doing, and that was a problem. But now, if somebody wants to work 14 hours and make more money, they can. So this is a huge opportunity. There is also, from the employer side, there's flexibility of workforce, where we may need somebody to work with us for some period of time. Then after that, the transaction's over and that's over. Last of all, one of the big benefits is the quality of the service. The quality of the service has significantly gone up because of the gig economy. I want to cite you, about 16 years ago when I first started working. I had to take a taxi in the morning to fly to Bombay, and I remember I had to actually call up the taxi, driver to wake him up, because this was before the days of Ola and Uber. There was a taxi stand in the corner, and my biggest worry in the morning was that the taxi guy won't wake up, right? So, so service has come a long way, and things are very good, right? However, I also want to bring out there's a flip side to the gig economy, and there's risks which are there, and I just want to bring these forward and just add to the discussion. So when we are basically just providing gig economy services through our own skill set or through our learnings that we have, that's a very effective way of being a gig economy worker. However, there's also the other aspect of the gig economy where gig economy workers start making investments. For example, they buy a car and they say, okay, I'll buy a car and then I'll run a taxi, right? or they may buy a hotel stay, or they might take a property on rent and then say, okay, I'll put it up on one of these sites. Those kind of transactions, they carry a lot of risk. Typically what happens is that the aggregator does not take the risk of the asset. The risk of the assets rests on the individuals, whereas the aggregator only provides an income. And like COVID has been really good for the gig economy, but at the same time, if you ask a taxi driver, right, about what COVID did to him, he's in big trouble, because he's not making as much money as he used to, yet he has these payments to make, and he has an asset which he has to service, otherwise the bank's going to take it away. So it's a double-edged sword. It's not just a one-way trip where it's all hunky-dory. There are risks to it, right? The third aspect of the gig economy is that the gig economy is entrepreneurship at the worker level, but it's not quite entrepreneurship. And the problem with that is that the control is always with the aggregator, right? So the pricing mechanism of what you will get is always controlled by the aggregator, whoever you work with, right? And today you could be getting good pricing, but tomorrow, as soon as the supply of workers comes in, or this, your entire economics or your entire metrics can change very quickly. So this is something all gig economy workers need to be very aware of, that it's not necessary that you are earning something today and you will continue to earn that for the rest of your life, which in a job maybe you could, but typically that's not the case with gig economy. There is a critical need for aggregators to be responsible with their pricing. A company which is got a significant amount of capital can burn through cash, hire a lot of gig economy workers. However, it can't sustain them, and that is a problem in the longer term. So those gig economy workers could be people who had jobs, they quit their jobs, became gig workers, and then subsequently they find that the company that they were relying on is suddenly out of business, out of money, and therefore there are no jobs available. So that's a big risk again, right? So what is the way forward? The way forward is that the gig economy model needs to move to a version 2.0, which is going to be a more sustainable model. And this is where aggregators are responsible, and they are ensuring continuity of gig workers, right? Any aggregator who exists knows exactly what their gig workers make, right? And they know exactly what is the income that these the workers are drawing. So it is the responsibility of the aggregators to ensure that the gig workers have a sustainable income going forward. And that is a huge change that I think should happen in the industry. The other aspect that needs to be developed is where asset investment risks exist. For example, like I mentioned, a taxi, right? There needs to be models which need to be developed where investment risk can be reduced for the gig worker themselves, and some kind of a model needs to be evolved where the onus of the asset doesn't necessarily lie on the gig worker. Third requirement which is there, which everybody has mentioned, is that there is a need for clarity on the gig worker's status, right? While the government is recognizing it, yet clean clarity on how it's going to work, what is going to be the the payouts, what is the social security, right? Everything needs to be in black and white. And once you have it in black and white, then the companies can then decide whether they want to move in this direction or whether they want to move in the traditional direction. But that really needs to be there needs to be clarity over there. The industry that we come from is trucking and warehousing, and in trucking and warehousing there is a huge opportunity for gig operations. However, unless we have clarity, there is not going to be much traction. And the reason for that is that one doesn't want to be in the in the same situation as an Uber is, for example, in London, where suddenly the government is now saying that they're not contract workers, they're now your employees. You have to give them all these benefits. So lack of clarity is actually what's holding back the gig working economy in India. And I feel if we have some of that, we will be able to go on on this road very quickly, right? That's all I have. If there's any questions, I'm very happy to answer.
Sure. Thank you, Ishan. And from your interaction with us, we all have got some more work for SOCHM and all of us to contribute to. That how we can stimulate at what government is finally going to bring and what rules and regulations will come in. Of course, as I said earlier, that it should complement and ensure that the growth of the industry goes to a multiplier effect instead of restricting
Absolutely,
the
and
growth.
I think it needs to have a very important aspect with predatory pricing, because predatory pricing is what is going to destroy, the livelihoods of gig workers, and it's not necessarily going to be other regulation. PF will not save them. Predatory pricing is what destroys gig workers' livelihoods.
Absolutely. So the back-end team of Mr. Rajora, Ankit and Kaushal, I hope you've noted this point, which Ishan has said that, it is these particular points which are really going to help us. So whenever we come up and we get an opportunity to interact with the government, we must share these, whatever we've discussed today. So now we have actually 3 questions, and the 3 questions are from first question is from Mr. Sunil Singh. The second is from Nimish Gupta, and the third is from Arun, from Mr. Arun. So my first question is from Sunil Singh, and his question is that how can we implement the gig economy or implement gig economy in the manufacturing industries in India? If we implement that, then what measures do we have to follow? So the first question is whether gig economy, gig workers can be adopted, or can they join the manufacturing side of the country? And if they can, then what measures they should follow? This question, I would address it to 2 people. One is to our professor and Kaushik, for you to answer, since both of you have done a lot of research and also have a lot of knowledge about the subject as to how this can actually be implemented in the manufacturing side. So over to you, Saurav first, and subsequently Kaushik.
Okay, so the answer to it, I would say, read this book. It's just got released. Not all questions can be answered in one seminar. Also, I edit this journal, so read this one also. Okay, so how can it be implemented in manufacturing sector? Actually, a project is being done by there is a skill university in Haryana, I will not name it, and they are working very closely with a lot of manufacturers in automobile sector particularly, and all other sectors, whereby a student, while he's studying, he gets on the job education while he is at the automobile center. So the professor is theory professor, will teach him online from from his home or the campus. They don't have the campus right now. The campus is coming up. It's a new concept, and the student gets enrolled in the program, and as soon as he gets enrolled, he gets onto the manufacturing sector. Then he again comes back and learns. So he's spending partly learning, partly working on how to make an automobile, how to what's the new mechanical engineering concepts involved in electrical engineering or self-charging vehicles. So practically in manufacturing, there are changes, design thinking. I don't know if you've seen, a lot of courses are being on design thinking, on so that's the area where these gig economy workers would come. Of course, when we say project work, entire project management is nothing but gig worker. You get a definite timeline to do something. So entire project management, the whole discipline, it's in manufacturing and it is related with the gig economy. So any new infrastructure project, any new factory, all would be part of your gig, this thing, and it requires specialized knowledge for that particular period only, right?
Okay.
I hope I answered part of your answer, but part of your question.
Part of the question. So Kanishk, over to you. Since you've done a lot of research in this newly released paper today, would you add to the question from from Sunil that how gig economy workers can join the manufacturing side? So I would also like to know. I'm not sure if he's there or because a lot of so now we
Gautam ji, Ishan ji, Kiran ji, and me, and you, I think. Yeah, 5 of us are on screen.
Yeah, 5 of us. So never mind, we are moving to our next question, which is from, I've just got these questions. So this question is from Nimish yes, this question is from Nimish Gupta. He wants to answer, he has said that please suggest us the venues and opportunities for data scientists to work as a consultant, freelance owner, business and social problems. You know, how they can, data scientists, how they can get engaged as a consultant and a freelancer. So, you know, Ishan and Kiran, if you could take this question and tell us how we can do this. I will just repeat the question. The question is that how data scientists can work as a freelance consultant, and where are the places where he can join or contract. So any answers, please share.
Well, I don't have too much information about this, so I'll have to, take the high road. But I would say the data scientists are basically the in-demand job right now. We're in the logistics field and we work with technology, and data scientists are a role that there is a huge demand. However, project identification for data scientists, or the definition of a certain project or a gig for a data scientist, is something that we always have trouble defining. Hence, what we do is we end up hiring somebody full time, because we are not able to very well define a role for it. However, I'm sure there are many organizations out there which are very defining data scientist roles or gigs very, very effectively. And yes, I'm not sure where they're available, but I'm sure they are there.
So the others, yeah, Kiran, add to the answer. Yes, sure.
So I will add to Ishan's answer. I would say that if you want to be a gig worker, so first of all, look for a platform, wherein you can look for your freelancing opportunity. Upwork could be one option. Then set up your profile, do it with perfectionism, set up your biography, and set up your portfolio, set up some of your sample projects, write down your skills, use your connects to send proposals, and write quotes and get your first projects. Like Upwork, there are many such platforms wherein you can post your biography. So social is the way.
Social, absolutely. I was coming to the same point. Thank you, Kiran, for elaborating in a very perfect manner. Saurav, would you like to add to it?
I think the only point is that yes, there are many, there is new innovation in education which has come, whereby you pay later. You study now and you pay later. And so they are coming up. So you can also, they train you for some 36, 80, 90 for a month, 2 months, 3 months. And then they say, whatever salary you get, you'll have to pay 20% of it. So I think, you could explore, and they're getting venture funding also, not to name that there are many players which say pay later scheme in education. So I think even you could get enrolled with them. They make you work hard, like 18 hours. They train you. They give you the apartment. They give you food. But after 3 or 6 months, you will have to work. They'll get you a good job also. So you could also explore that kind of opportunity, apart from whatever has been already said. And if you don't know such, I have a lot of case studies. I'll share the names of those companies. Right?
Sure. You must share it with the SOCM team so that we can share with our participants. That would be really great. So our last question of the day is from Mr. Arun Rath, and his question is, which industries are most likely to take advantage of the gig economy in India in the next 2 to 5 years, of course, barring the existing digital content, ITES services related. So, Saurav, you'll have to answer that question again for us, that, which industries are most likely to take advantage of the gig economy. I will definitely add to it, but, I would like to...
I already, mentioned that three industries are lopsided. One is IT, the other one is HR, and third one is designing. And it is expected to have these 3 sectors. This is a report by, published in Hindu newspaper, 15 million freelance workers in these particular sectors. Apart from that, I have mentioned, this entire list, it's in my rough hand, but all those sectors which have developed in United States, all similar kind of sectors will develop in India, but focus would be on these. 15 million jobs will I mean, forecasted, and the demand has been forecasted, but a lot of other areas like tutoring, you know, we just saw one of the panelists saying that you could help a student, you know, do his homework. Now, I was approached by many Australian universities to help their students in their research work. You know, of course, I couldn't take up that project, but that is what, you know, this is kind of new companies are coming up whereby they are outsourcing a lot of work to, so in take it any field, there would be interconnections and digital connection. But of course, the focus would be on IT, HR, and designing. These will remain the core, creating 15 million jobs.
15 million jobs. And what about logistics?
Yeah, but
then? Because I feel that
I think
this is the entire list,
huge
you know.
space for
okay, this is the entire
logistics has a
list.
huge
Okay.
requirement for gig workers. You know, logistics has the ability to define small gigs. You know, we in logistics we've had daily workers for the last I don't know how many years. So you know, logistics is definitely an industry where gig workers can thrive, right? However, they may not be, you know, white collar, they will be blue collared workers, but yes, there is a huge opportunity within the logistics space.
Thank you, Ishan. So now, just since we all have heard each other, just to sum up, you know, I would like to say thank you to all of you, and it was been real privilege and, you know, pleasure to listen to the opinions of each one of you, and I'm looking forward to interacting with you after the session as well. So what we have seen is that, you know, India has a limitless opportunity over here right now. And the government has to come in between, but to supplement it, to complement it, so that we all are in tandem and lead to our one goal of making it to a 5 trillion economy. That's what it's going to be the need of the hour for all of us over here. So now I request Mr. Rajora to please join us and share with us in how, you know, the entire team at SOCHM will take the discussions forward, so that each one of us benefits, and of course our country benefits from our discussion today. So over to you, Mr. Rajora.
Thank you so much for you know, more than 1.5 hours, all, you know, intense discussions on this important topic. And as we all know, the finance minister mentioned gig economy, and I think the government is willing to support this industry, and it is going to grow further and further. And you know, this is the time now we have another webinar on this same platform, so I've been receiving calls from our technology team to you know, close it. So we are almost, you know, finished our discussions. And so my grateful thanks to our chairman, Mr. Gautam Wali, for his kind presence, his support, his guidance. Always he's there. Of course, Madam Chavi and Professor Dr. Saurabh Agarwal is with us. He is a managing committee member of SOCHM, and all the young and you know, very energetic and people those who are working in the industry. I can see so many experts are there. They have, you know, explained their vision, how they look at it, and we will take this forum, you know, to the next stage. We were supposed to get the labor minister, labor secretary, but due to some, you know, coinciding another meeting with the government, he could not join, but certainly he has asked our opinion, our suggestions. So gist of these discussions will be submitted to them, and maybe any meeting in the ministry, then we will surely come back to you and involve everyone, and we should have, you know, a periodic discussion on this upcoming and sunshine industry, where, you know, a large number of employment is being generated, and this is how we see the shift in the labor and employment index. So thank you, everyone. Thanks a lot for everyone, all the experts. Our special thanks to Mr. Gautam Wali, Mr. Saurabh Agarwal, Madam Chavi Hemant, and all the experts. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Gautam.
Thank
See
you,
guys.
Chavi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chavi. Bye.
Thank you, Dr. Agarwal. Thank you, Rajora ji.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Gautam ji.
Thank you, sir.